Welcome to the Not Okay with Gray podcast, where our intention is to empower men and women to change their mindsets about aging so they can make the rest of their lives the best of their lives. This podcast is designed to be a dose of high-octane motivation and inspiration that propels you to embrace the idea that you really aren't aging. What you're actually doing is evolving, and through your evolution, the longer you live, the better you become at living. Our goal is to empower you to create the life of your dreams because you're never too old to build a life that you love. We want you to build a life of joy, passion, and purpose, filled with inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. This is what it means by saying, I'm not okay with gray. So, if you're ready to begin the journey of transformation, which will lead you to authentic happiness, it's time to get started with your host, Coach Michael Taylor, the irrepressible optimist with a passion for the impossible.
Hello and welcome to the Not Okay with Gray podcast, where the intention is to empower men and women to change their mindsets about aging so they can make the rest of their lives the best of their lives. You see, contrary to mainstream media, it is my belief there's never been a better time to be alive on the planet than right now. And my goal is to provide insights, education, and motivation that challenges and inspires you to embrace this sense of optimism. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about how the changing roles of masculinity can help us find our passions. For the past 25 years or so, I've been writing and speaking about the changing roles of manhood and masculinity. And what I've concluded is one of the greatest challenges facing our world is that most men are trapped in what I call an antiquated paradigm of masculinity. Now, I define a paradigm as a rigid way of believing, thinking, and behaving. And in order for us to change the paradigm, we must be willing to engage in a new conversation with men, and that is the intention of this episode, to have a conversation about masculinity and how shifting the paradigm of masculinity can support men in finding their passions. And calling in today from the City of Lights, Paris, France, is a man who is also committed to creating this new paradigm. His name is Kartik Singh, and he's a male advocate who has been heavily involved in men's work for many years. He's also a filmmaker and storyteller who uses cinema as a way of expressing his passions and sharing lessons about life. He's also an actor who's been featured in English, French, and Hindi films. And I had an opportunity to meet Kartik a few weeks ago at a men's retreat, and we immediately hit it off. So I also get to introduce him as my friend. So without further ado, let's welcome Kartik to the show. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hello, Coach. I'm great. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
All righty. So it's great to have you on the show. But before we dive into your story and your work, let's start off with a few icebreakers. So first of all, let's start off with some sentence completion. So complete these sentences. I really love to
do things that are out of the ordinary.
Okay. My superpower is
Compassion.
I am proud of
Having done my workout today.
Okay. Life is
More than half full.
one thing I would like to change about the world is
Education.
and the future is
Bright.
now let's imagine you're going to be trapped on an island for 30 days and you can only take one book with you. What book would you take and why?
Thank you. Wow. That's a good one. I don't think I would take a novel. I think I would take a book of poetry, so that I could just read poems over and over again. The poetry of Rumi.
My favorite. Love
Yeah.
Rumi. Love Rumi. So, do you have a go-to quote that you use to help you deal with challenges and adversities in your life?
Um, I don't. I should, and I don't. But I am very inspired by quotes. Um, I'm thinking that and that every day in every way I'm growing stronger and stronger. That's something an affirmation that I'll use sometimes when I'm taking a really brisk power walk.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's an affirmation that I use. I remember when I first began my transformational journey, that was my go-to quote. Every day in every way, I keep getting better and better. I remember that. Love that. Love that quote. Now, name a person that has shaped you into the person you are today.
Hmm. Both my parents come to mind for sure. Um, and there's a man. He was my history teacher in high school. He passed away not too long back. His name is Dr. Robert Tostovan. And Dr. Tostovan is a man who, at a time as an adolescent, when I was lacking in confidence, he was somebody who I could talk to and who was very supportive during that time. I remember being about 16 years old and having him and his faith, his belief in me, um, really being powerful for me and something that I could build on in terms of building self-confidence.
Hmm. Okay. So there are some people who are pessimistic about the future in general, while others are optimistic. So where do you fall on the spectrum between optimism and pessimism about the future in general?
Yes, I'm optimistic, no doubt about it. And that said, I do recognize that there are um, challenges that we face in the world that we as a humankind face. Um, and so, but I am optimistic. I'm optimistic for our children and our children's children.
Okay. Now, we recently met at a workshop called the New Warrior Training Adventure, hosted by an organization called the Mankind Project. So I'm curious, so when and how did you become involved with their work?
I'll tell you, I got involved a couple years back at a time in my life when I was struggling with certain things, struggling with how I show up in life, and also struggling with what it means to be a man. And actually, so um, a friend told me about the initiation weekend, and I applied, and I looked at the website, and I was very afraid because I thought that it was going to be something very um, well, like going to army boot camp or something, that it was going to be very physically challenging, and that it was gonna stretch me. And I don't know, I think in my mind that it was going to be something like the first half an hour of Full Metal Jacket, the Stanley Kubrick movie, where you see these men going through basic training and, just, I don't know, maybe running a lot and doing a lot of push-ups or something like that, and doing a lot of physical hardship. And that wasn't what it was at all. The work for the most part was really inner work. And in some ways that's a lot harder than going and running laps and doing push-ups and stuff. Um, so yeah, for me, yeah, there was some, I guess, kind of a healthy fear going into the weekend, and at the same time, a handful of friends who I knew who had done the weekend, are men that I trust, and so um, I know that one of them just said, um, for me to trust, when I was asking him, am I going to be okay? Is this going to work out? What am I getting into? And he said, just trust. And I did. And it was a really big piece of transformation for me, and a really big piece for me of my own understanding of what it means to be a man, what it means to be human, and what it means to be in relationship with others.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you who may not be aware of what we're talking about, there's an organization called the Mankind Project, and they offer this training. It's called the New Warrior Training Adventure. And it's a 3-day weekend in which men get to really examine how they view masculinity, really look at how society and culture has shaped our beliefs about what it means to be a man. And it gives us an opportunity to possibly redefine manhood and masculinity through a different lens. Because I will assert that in most cases, culturally, we've been conditioned as men to disconnect from who we really are. One of the challenges I think that we have as men is that in our culture, it's like we've been taught that feelings are for women. And so men sort of at an early age start disconnecting from their emotions and knowing how to feel and express them. And what this training does is gives you an opportunity to reconnect and to really change your perception about what it means to be a man. So it's a really powerful program that I highly recommend. If you're a man and you're thinking about, or you're dealing with some challenges in your life and may not know how to deal with them, it might be a great opportunity for you to confront some of those challenges that you have. So if you go to mkp.org, it can give you more information. Now, Kartik, I have come to believe that there are really only two things that'll cause a man to want to change. One is pain, and the other is what I call divine discontent, which is just an inner knowing and inner feeling that something's just off. We may not have the words for it, we may not understand it, but we intuitively know that something's just off. So I'm curious, when you went into your training, you mentioned that there were some challenges, but was it pain or was it that divine discontent that said, look, let's go do this thing?
So interesting. Such a great question. And I think certainly the divine discontent has been there. I was not, I can see, for example, the pain of losing a loved one, or maybe getting a divorce, things like that as being markers in life that would throw a man into this work. And I think for me, it was just a general sense of not connecting and not being present. And when you were describing the weekend, what it brought to mind for me is how I've read so many books on self-help, and I see that can be an escape from me really digging in and doing my inner work. And so, what I get out of a book is an intellectual understanding of things, and that can be fine and useful. However, in order for me to really get down to healing things, trauma in life, in childhood, things like that, it takes more than just reading the words um, of a best-selling author. I think that what I got out of the weekend was being able to have experiences within the framework of the weekend that forced me to, in my body, confront some of that trauma. And so for me, that's what was so special about the weekend, as well as other work that people can do. Certainly, I recommend highly, working with a therapist and doing any number of things, but really being active and being proactive about doing that work around myself. And that's what I would encourage people to do. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's the benefit. Yeah.
yeah, and that's a great point to make, because one of the challenges that I've had, or I had most of my life, was I lived in my head. And like yourself, I had read all these books and I had an understanding of trauma and an understanding of depression in my head, but I hadn't really dealt with in my body, in my heart, the pain and the trauma that I had experienced at a very early age. And it wasn't until I started doing this inner work that I learned to get out of my head, to get into my heart, because that's where the true growth and transformation comes from. Because it's easy for us to intellectualize and to talk about depression as an example, but until we
Yes.
experience it and feel it, we can't really heal it. So it's been said that what you can feel, you can heal. And I think that's what the training helps do, is to help you feel, heal, and release and let go of some of that negative trauma energy, if you will, so that we can be free. Now,
Yes.
you were part of the first New Warrior training created specifically for Black men and men of color. What was that
Yeah.
experience like for you?
It was very moving and an important part of my own journey, which is that, I'm the son of immigrants. My parents came from India, and thanks to a law in 1965 that changed in the United States, immigration laws were liberalized at that time, and that allowed first my dad and then my mom to come to the United States. I was going to say to this country, but I'm not in this country. I'm in France at the moment, as you know. Um, and that for me, um, I had been in denial about what my experience really was, being um, of Indian heritage and growing up in the Midwest and in schools and in neighborhoods that were mainly white. And so through doing a weekend like this for Black and brown men, I have been able to observe the way that men have been able to free themselves of certain limitations that are due specifically to the color of their skin. And I've been able to identify places in my own life where I would naturally shrink, where I
Mm,
would naturally play it small, and where I would naturally try to be invisible and try to um, go along to get along and not have an opinion, and just do what everybody says so that I can feel safe and that I can feel okay in the mass. And so that's beautiful work for me because I see my own truth through being on a weekend where men are seeing their truths around this. And so it was very powerful, and it's something that I really take with me, and I'm eager to continue doing that work for myself as well as um, doing weekends that go along this same line in the future.
yeah, yeah. And one of my favorite quotes is, if you don't go within, you'll always go without. And as you were speaking, what I recognize is that the New Warrior Training Program, personal growth and development, is really just a process of going within to examine our beliefs, assumptions, perceptions about people that may not look like us, and
Mm.
just having an open mind to possibly change our perceptions about people that don't look like us. And obviously, here in America, there's lots of challenges around race. But the optimist in me doesn't believe race relations are getting worse. I think if we look at the trajectory we're on, we're moving in the right direction. We definitely have a ways to go, but I think, again, my perception is that it's moving in the right direction. And when I see men like yourself, who happens to be a man of color, and you participating in this particular program, it fuels my optimism, that
Mhm.
we are as a culture, as a humanity, waking up to our oneness, that we aren't different. We aren't, we're all the same. So I was inspired that you took that challenge to come and to share and to support and to empower men of color. That was really beautiful. Now, you currently reside in France.
Yes.
Obviously, we're talking about a different culture.
Yes.
So I'm curious, are the trainings different because you've done both? Are the trainings different in American workshops versus French workshops?
Yes, they can be. Yes. It's so interesting from country to country how the trainings can be different. And, you know, I find that the French can be very regimented and very, um, there's a kind of, what would I say? um, Strictness about certain things. It feels a little bit more attached to the rules of running a good weekend than I'll find in other places. And
Mm,
you know, and I think that it's going to depend on the leadership style of the leaders of a weekend. But that's something that I found in France. And you know, I think that hopefully on any given weekend that the leader's intuition is really going to um, speak to the men that are on the weekend and sort of respond to what their needs are. And that's always been the case on any weekend that I've done, that there's been a really good sense of support and safety and listening, and that is all there for all men who come to the weekend. And if I could just give a fun example, that I was in Spain last fall for the training, and it was the very first time that a training had been done in Spain, and so the two countries that were supporting the Spain weekend were France and Mexico, and so there were leaders from both France and Mexico, and it was interesting to see how different the leadership style was, and that was something where the Mexicans were much looser and more sort of flowing, and whereas the French were trying to run a tighter ship. So I could so
mm,
there was culturally some stuff that was going on there, and then language barrier of course, between Spanish and French and English. So it was a real kind of
mm.
um, lost in translation type weekend. Lost and found in translation, but yes.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah,
Okay. Now, what would you say to the man who's watching this
yeah.
and they're going, hmm, that sounds interesting, but I don't know, maybe maybe they're dealing with life challenges or just looking for something different in their lives. What would be your message to them right now?
My message would be that there's an opportunity here for real connection, and it's a kind of connection that I did did not know how much I was craving,
Hmm.
that I was deeply, deeply craving. And what I mean by that is that my relationships with men up until knowing this work, those relationships were very superficial. And it would have to do with getting drunk together, okay, and watching sports, um, and just very passive and not very deep in terms of the connection. And um, I know that even, when I was that a lot of the friends that are from childhood or from, college, those are friends with whom um, just being authentic, um, speaking my truth, being vulnerable, there's no place for that in these relationships that I had with men. And so um, through doing this work, I was introduced to a new way of being. And this new way of being involves really telling the truth, telling my truth, hearing the man across from me and what his truth is. And through that, forging really strong bonds that I didn't think were possible. I didn't think that were possible. And I have gotten a lot of fulfillment in a place where that I didn't even know existed. I didn't know that this space actually existed.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because before I did the training, I had done a lot of healing work, transformational work. I'd actually facilitated workshops for men and women and so forth. And what I learned in the training, which really surprised me, was the fact that when I got really honest with myself, I really didn't trust men.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was an eye-opening experience because for me, I think like a lot of men, to use the word intimacy with a man is uncomfortable. I think a lot of it has to do with our homophobic culture, that
Yeah.
saying that I love another man or I care about another man and being intimate with a man, it somehow is sexual or whatever. But I realized in the training that I just had a distrust for men. It was always like I had this wall up that I was always trying to compete against them, and again, not showing vulnerability, and always trying to impress them with my titles and my labels and my stuff. And when I did the training, it allowed me to kind of drop those walls and to be comfortable experiencing true intimacy with other men without it being sexual. And it was transformational. When like I said, when I went to the training, I had done a lot of healing work. As a matter of fact, I registered for the training, and actually, here's a really cool story. I was
Hmm.
sitting up on one Sunday, and there was this documentary on television about a wild man weekend. And as I watched this documentary, they were talking to these men, and these guys were, out in the woods banging drums. That's kind of the gist of it. But they were talking about things like the pain of divorce and the competitiveness that they felt they had to have against other men. And so, as I listened to them, I really related and resonated with what they were saying. And by the way, all of the men in the documentary were older, gray-haired white men. But as they shared, I really resonated with what they were saying. And it turned out that it was a documentary about the Mankind Project. And after watching that documentary that Sunday, I went to the grocery store to buy some groceries. And I pull out the shopping basket, the shopping cart. And when I pulled out the shopping cart, there was a flyer for the Mankind Project in this basket. And I'm like, wait a minute. Now, again, I was part of that new age movement for a while where I said, ooh, the universe is talking to me. But when I saw it, I said, oh, I know I'm supposed to do this training. And again, I really didn't know what it was, but because of that serendipitous, synchronistic event, I knew that I was supposed to be there. So I got the flyer, contacted them, signed up, and the rest is history. So if you're a man and you're again, shall I say, dealing with some stuff. That's the best way to put it. Maybe you're dealing with some stuff and may not know where to turn. Once again, let me suggest that you go to mkp.org, and there may be some solutions to the stuff you're dealing with there. And so check it out and see what you think. So with that being said, Kartik, let's switch gears a little bit.
Well,
And
before we do, I just want to say that when men go and look on the website, that they will see that weekends take place throughout um, the US, Canada, Mexico, and many countries around the world. In Europe, there's a weekend in Sweden, the UK, Ireland, Germany, France, Spain. This upcoming September 2023, Italy will have its first weekend, and Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. So there are weekends all over the world. And just to say that you will see a price tag that's at the bottom of the page when you go to sign up, and that there are financial aid and scholarships that are available for that not to be a deterrent from a man who wants to get involved with this work.
Yeah. And what I know from experience is when the desire is great enough, you'll figure out a way. You'll figure out a way. And like I say, there are scholarships and things like that, but this work is that important. And I think that we become resourceful when we commit to our own growth. And I know from personal experience, if I'm hungry enough for something, I'll figure out a way to get it. So think about that.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So again, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about your passion. But before we do, I do want to lead into that with doing this work. What I know, what for me, I can speak for myself, is that doing this work has allowed me to tap into my passions, which is writing and speaking. I didn't know anything about the unique gifts and talents that I have before I started doing this work, before I started this transformational process. So finding your passions, this I think is part of this growth journey. I think when we really do our work and tap into who we really are, we uncover that which is already within us. And again, I honestly believe every human being has a purpose and a passion, and there's not one purpose and passion that's better than another. It's just you have to find yours. And so, Kartik, I know your passion is filmmaking and acting. So I'm curious, when did you first realize that you wanted to be a filmmaker?
I think that as a child, I definitely consumed a lot of content, and that then in my teens, I started to act in school plays, and from there, I know that there was a point in I really got the bug when I acted in a friend's film, and this was I was in college, and there was a classmate and a guy that lived on the floor of my dorm, and he was making a movie, and he was making a movie with a Super 8 camera. And so we made this sort of very Keystone Cops type of movie where a man's wallet was stolen, and then we just started chasing each other around. And we shot this where I was at school, which was in Washington, D.C. And seeing what we did to shoot it, and then going and watching him on the Steenbeck, the editing table, and how he was splicing the different bits of film together, and then seeing it projected. There was a magic in that I really, really loved. And I just also recognize how there were important films in my childhood, where they connected with something so deeply. And it's been written so much about how a film like Star Wars takes the hero's journey and the power of myth, as Joseph Campbell has written about it, and really makes it accessible to audiences. But when I'm watching a film like that, I'm connecting with not only the story of all these characters, but also with uh, all of the myths that join up in that story, and really with in a way, with all myths in all of the history of time, and with the myths of the ancestors, and so I feel a strong connection with that. And And that's something that inspires me a lot when I'm looking to tell a story. So it's kind of both the Star Wars and those types of films were the inspiration for me as a viewer, and then the doing of it through acting in my friend Chris's film was a way of getting started with touching that and seeing how there were ways that I could tell my own stories.
Mm. Now, you decided to move to France to study French films, correct? Is that what was?
Yes, you know
Yeah. So
what I
what was the allure, I guess, for France?
you know France was a place that well, France is a place that holds the arts in a very different way. There's a different space for the arts,
Absolutely.
and it's a place where, for example, so many great artists in the United States that were not being able to be appreciated came over to France and and had great success and were accepted. For example, during the civil rights movement and before, there were great thinkers who could come over to France and really experience being accepted and appreciated. And so France has always been in a different space. And even there are some filmmakers, even in today, like I would say the Coen brothers and maybe Jim Jarmusch. There are certain filmmakers who have an even greater following in France than they do in the United States. And the joke often is about how Jerry Lewis is appreciated so much in France. And it's true that Jerry Lewis is considered to be a genius. Um, and that makes people laugh, because I think that maybe the perception it in the United States is that Jerry Lewis is either it's Jerry's kids or it's just of this kind of goofball, But in reality, if you look at his body of work, it's beautiful. And so, getting back to my coming over to France, it was initially just to experience life in a big, large European city and in a European capital. But once I got here and started to see how the French approach is so different, it's something that um, really gelled for me. I saw how the French have a way of of looking at film and appreciating film that that I enjoy, and so initially I just started watching a lot of films here, and then got into a film program and did my film studies here. Um, and you know, after having finished school, I had a thought of, what would it be like to go back and be in Hollywood. And I spent a few weeks in Southern California just to see if that would be a good fit for me. And it wasn't a good fit for me. And I'm okay with that. I think that there's some people for whom it really works, and that for me, I just felt much more at home in Paris and doing films that um, yeah, just in this European system.
Yeah. Now, I've always been curious when you see a great actor, right, and how they're able to be so vulnerable and to express emotions on cue in a way where you just get moved by, the emotional sharing, and you just get pulled into who they are. I'm curious. So how and I was thinking about this because when I went to the Mankind Project, one of the things that I learned was being comfortable with my emotions and expressing them. So I would think that someone who has done the work, if you will, or would be able to access that part of themselves. So I'm wondering, as an actor, would the work that you've done enhance your acting ability?
Absolutely,
Mm,
absolutely, and it's because um, the more I know myself, and the more I know really the insides and out, insides out of what triggers me. Something that an actor could do, for example, if they want, as they're starting to develop their craft, is just to have a little notebook and to write down, in their notebook, okay, these are things that make me cry, or these are things that make me feel really sad. These are things that make me feel really excited. These are things that make me feel angry, and really getting into, these are things that make me feel fearful or make me feel shame. Having that list of things can be a way that when I'm working on a character, I can start to really blend, things that, what are things that I share with this character, and then start to build from there, as part of the preparation.
Nice. That makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Now, I'm curious, as an actor, can you think of a role that you've seen on screen and you thought to yourself, man, I could have killed that role? Is there a role that you would have liked to seen yourself play?
Oh, I still do dream of playing Othello, actually.
Okay.
And so that's something that is on my radar. And you know, I mean, yeah, I'll say that Othello is big. The other thing that's in my mind and that I'll share is that, um, I I find that there are still not enough opportunities for people who look different, to shine in roles, um, and and so I know that certainly there are more, um, people today who are maybe Indian or Latin or Asian, Chinese. There are more roles now than there were a couple of decades ago, and that's. I mean, if I'm talking about my own story, it's that I very naturally moved over to directing because I didn't find that there was enough work for me as an actor,
Mm.
and um, that oftentimes the work has come from writing things for myself, and that's something that I still intend to do more of, is writing things for myself. And so, um yeah, and the journey continues, and certainly, when I am out in the world and talking with people, talking shop with other directors and things, I do let them know that I am open for business as an actor. And
So
yes.
how do you, I guess, how would you practice as an actor? Is that would be like doing plays, or how do you hone that craft as an actor?
Definitely going to class, going to
Okay.
acting class, and it would be doing scene work, and you know, um, just there are other ways to practice, like for example, doing, uh, Meisner. Sanford Meisner was a great, innovator in acting, who has a technique that involves repetition. And so that would be just working with other, actors who are trained in that technique. Um, and there are other acting exercises that can be done to train the imagination, thinking about, sense memory, for example. What are the feelings, and what using the five senses in order to conjure up a situation. Maybe it's holding a morning cup of coffee, those types of things. And I would say too that as much as I can practice presence, real true presence, and seeing and feeling everything that's going on around me in a given moment, that also is, moment to moment, practicing my craft.
Mm. Ah. And once again, it comes back to doing that inner work, because that inner work is what allows you to have that presence in the moment awareness, which is essential, I guess, to being a great actor. Now, I'm curious, who would be one of your favorite actors that you just admire?
Oh, Philip Seymour Hoffman comes to mind right away.
Okay.
Um, and I admire his body of work so much, and I'm saddened that the world lost him in 2014. Um, and but there have been so many. There have been so
Yeah,
many, and um, and thankfully, there's no shortage of good performances
sure.
out there can be admired. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm a big movie buff myself. I just love watching movies. As a matter of fact, I am writing a screenplay, um, which is sort of autobiographical. It's kind of my life story. That, if you can imagine, Will Smith and the Pursuit of Happiness, and
yeah,
combine that with Good Will Hunting with Robin Williams, that's my life
right.
story. So,
Okay.
imagine those two bodies of work. Now, actually, my all time favorite actor is Robin Williams. Robin Williams.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
that guy, and again, obviously we lost him also, but I just loved how not a lot of people, in my opinion, can go from comedic to drama in such a convincing way that you can see them in both. That makes sense. But for
Yeah.
me, Robin had this amazing ability to do both equally as well, and it's convincing. And one of my all-time favorite movies is Dead Poets Society. And
Yes.
oh, that performance in that movie, just, I can't watch that movie without crying at the end when they stand up on the desk and they say, "Captain, my cap." Oh, I just love that scene. But
Yeah.
yeah, he really just stands out to me as just one of the all-time greatest actors ever. Just an amazing human being too.
And you know
So
what I want to say about Robin Williams is that not too long ago I saw something online, and it was one of the children who acted in Mrs. Doubtfire with Robin Williams. He's an adult now, and he was talking about how um, he experienced Robin Williams on set, which is that when they were shooting, um, Robin Williams was very animated, making everybody laugh, extremely full, and um, and that behind the scenes, when Robin Williams was by himself, that this boy at that time observed him as with his head in his hands, Robin Williams just very spent. You could find this interview on YouTube, I'm sure, but it's basically he's describing the fact that there were two sides of this man, um, the exterior and what he did in service of his art, and then the inner private life behind the scenes. And where I take so much inspiration is that my understanding is how much he suffered in his human experience and in his life on Earth, and yet how he was able to just put that aside when he was doing the work as an actor, and the generosity of just how he shared his gift despite the challenges that he faced.
yeah, and that's so sad and ironic that a man who brought so much joy and happiness to others couldn't have that same experience for himself. He just did not see maybe the gift that he was to others. And anyway, I just missed the guy. I just really.
Is it? But isn't it amazing that you ask me and I ask you, and really we're talking about two men, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Robin Williams, who um, each of them in their own way took their own lives,
Yeah, yeah,
and we're talking about that, and within the context of men's work, you know, uh, look, I think that the work that we do in Mankind Project, or the work that a man does in therapy, is a way of saving his own life. I save my own life by doing this work. And that men and suicide is still it's a huge problem in the world that we face. And that by getting in touch with this work, that's a way of saving my own life and saving the lives of men around me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, in men's work, we talk a lot about removing the mask, because we wear these metaphorical masks. And, I think about Robin Williams, and the mask that he wore was this happy-go-lucky, guy, but inside he was just, poor guy was so tormented. So that's the importance of this work, this men's work, is for us to be able to, or be willing to, remove those masks, heal our hearts, so we can be authentically who we are, which can be challenging. So I want to play a quick clip from one of your shorts real quick that I just absolutely love. Let's see here. Here we go.
You may start.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life.
That was really good, son. Now, how about a song before lunch? Ready. Just a second. Now, tonight's the night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Have faith. You're gonna be just fine, okay? Good. What are we singing today?
Jesus loves me.
Wonderful. Okay.
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong. They are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so.
How was school today? Anything new?
Jesus dies for our sins, so we have to accept him as our personal savior.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, Dad, if we accept him, we get to go to heaven.
Oh, really?
Stop teasing him.
I'm just trying to see what our son is learning in this wonderful school.
Mr. Maxwell says if we don't accept Jesus, we go to hell.
Nobody is going to hell, beta. Come on, put that away and have your dinner. Come.
Dear God, please help me save Mom and Dad.
Wow. So I'm curious, in terms of that story, is that part of your story, Kartik?
Yes, it is. It's all about little Kartik and how confused he was growing up far away from India, right in the middle of the United States, and very unsure and wanting to adapt and wanting to be like everybody else, and uh, very confused. Yeah. So that's that really is drawn entirely on my experience of growing up. Yeah.
Now, that was just a short clip. Did you do a full length thing of that, or of that movie, or?
No, that's something that I intend to do, is a feature-length version of that. And so that's the script has been written, and it's just about figuring out the logistics of doing it. And um, at the moment, I just finished a film here in France, and my next film will be something that I do in India. And after that is when I want to circle back and do the feature-length version of Saving Mom and Dad in the US.
Yeah, I really look forward to that one. I really, because I could relate as a former atheist, um, how, for most of my childhood, I was inundated with this message of Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and all the guilt and shame that came with that. And it took me several years to move through some of that conditioning. So yeah, I'd really be interested to see how that story unfolds. Now, with that being said, so you say you've got a new film coming out. You're working on a new film right now?
Yes, so the latest film is called Paris, Lost and Found, and it's the story of a young American 22-year-old who comes to Paris for the very first time. He's never left the United States, and he comes to try to meet his hero, who is an older French filmmaker who's kind of been forgotten by the world. And so our hero tries to really kind of go on a scavenger hunt through Paris, looking to try to see if he can meet his master, and get his blessing so that this young man can start his own artistic journey. And so the film is called Paris, Lost and Found. And at the moment, we are having a private cast and crew screening in September. And then following that, we're going to be on the festival trail and looking to end up on a streaming service so that it can be seen by viewers everywhere.
Nice. Nice. So as we wind down, I want to give you an opportunity. Let's just kind of reflect back over our conversation. So we talked a lot about men's work and the transformation that can occur through men's work, and then finding our passions, because I think they're tied together. I think it's important for us to be willing to do that in the work, to uncover or discover, if you will, our passion. So I just want to give you an opportunity just to kind of share your final thoughts on on our conversation.
Sure. I really think these things go hand in hand, because if I am not able to deal with my own pain and what's going on with me, then I'm not in a position where I can share and where I can really give what I have in the way of gifts. And so the more I do my work, the more I'm available to be giving in that way. And that these all are gifts that don't belong to me, that came from somewhere, and that go and that work through me. And so to me, what I learned through this work as well is that I'm not alone, and that in this community, in this brotherhood of men, that I can ask for help and I can be supported, and that I can also support and help other men. So that's really the beauty of it, and how these kind of things can really interact throughout life, and not only in the pursuit of art, but also just in the pursuit of living my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't express enough the importance for us as men to find our passions, to really find the thing that lights us up. You mentioned earlier about some of your conversations are hanging out with friends, and we get drunk or talk about sports or politics, but I think what we really long for is meaning and purpose and fulfillment. And the only way to get there is through our hearts. The only way to get there is by doing our work, connecting to who we are as human beings, I think. And so I think it's conversations like this that can support and empower men to maybe change their mindset a little bit. I started off talking about this paradigm of masculinity that we're trying to change. And in this new paradigm, we're talking about things of the heart. We're talking about the things that we love, we're passionate about. And that's the whole intention of the conversation, is to help men recognize that there's a lot more to life than sports, politics, arguing, drinking beer, having sex, and that kind of stuff. So So, Kartik, man, I just want to thank you for spending an hour with us on the Not Okay with Great podcast. You're an inspiration, my friend. I appreciate all that you're doing. I wish you continued success in all of your endeavors. And you and I are already connected. So I know that we'll be having collaborations in the future. So, again, thank you for spending an hour with us.
Oh, my great pleasure. Thank you for having me, and see you very soon.
Absolutely. So, thank you for tuning in to the Not Okay with Great podcast. And always remember, it's up to you to make the rest of your life the best of your life. So go out there and make and create the life of your dreams. We'll see you next episode. Take care.